Today I will be talking about an oasis of type design of the people. An oasis represents both abundance but also the barrenness that surrounds it. For much of the past century, modernism has imposed its Eurocentric principles to the world of design. The adoption of a more minimal and barren aesthetic aimed at banishing the lushness of ornament, which in Europe was associated with the excesses of the bourgeoisie, has had a numbing effect on a country such as India. Alice Twemlow, in her article in iMagazine, The Decriminalization of Ornament, talks about the fact that modernism removed any sort of meaning and function from ornament, and in effect, made it appear to be obsolete. Adolf Loos's case for banning the ornament was based on his belief that the lesser the civilized country, the more it uses ornament, and hence the banishment of ornament would lead to a more progressive society. However, the fact remains that prior to the Industrial Revolution, ornament has been an important aspect of all cultures, both advanced and so called less advanced ones. Decoration and intricacy are not only a mark of workmanship and skill developed over centuries, but it is also symbolic of identity and power. There's obviously a clash between how ornament is viewed in India versus in the West. In India, ornament is tantamount to beauty, abundance, and vibrancy. Ornament and its implied complexity have an important role, especially in a multifaceted and diverse country such as India. Ornament in India has the core function to organize society and create pride and identity in a community. The Indian mind remains deeply colonized even today. The importation of Bauhausian and Swiss modernism after Indian independence has straitjacketed its design sensibility, which couldn't be further away from the exuberance and the creative spontaneity one sees on the streets and villages of India. India is anything but minimal and sparse. The Indian instinct is to be expressive. Whether it is tattoos, bridal trousseaux, or trucks, we Indians have an innate love for the ornate and the idea of self expression. India is not a less is more country. It is layered, nuanced, and is a complex patchwork of ideologies, belief systems, and cultures. The Typecraft Initiative then is a celebration of South Asia's creative spirit. It was established in 2012 with the aim to not only provide livelihood to artisans, but also to inspire them to use design and technology to transform their craft to suit new audiences, contexts, and mediums. Simply put, Typecraft is about making typefaces from Indian crafts that are handmade by folk and tribal communities. This image depicts Goan tribal tattoos called Godna being transformed into a typeface that can be used on a computer. Creating a typeface from a craft is something new. However, Typecraft is not just about font design. Making typeface is one part of the work we do. A larger aspect of our work is to encourage inclusivity, collaboration, and authorship in the local communities we work with. Typecraft is about creating social value and bridging bonds between the urban and the rural, between the mainstream and the subaltern, and it is about breaking down stereotypes that divide craft and design. We start every project by asking craftswomen to take letter forms and to make letter forms by themselves based on their own crafts without giving them any constraints. This gives them a chance to express themselves and have ownership of the project. Here we see an initial set of letters drawn by the tribal tattoo artists. While they are raw and unusable in their current form as a typeface, they provide a valuable insight into what sorts of elements could be included in the final typeface. However, craftswomen who work with materials such as textiles oftentimes struggle with drawing. For this reason, we conduct design methodology workshops to introduce craftswomen to design thinking techniques and give them the freedom to fail and learn about their own craft through the making of letters. The workshop is tailor-made for each craft based on its materiality and process. We use cheap and easy to manipulate materials such as paper and scissors. The process can be challenging, and initially the craftswomen could only make very simple geometrical shapes, as you can see in this image. Um, these women have never used a pen or a scissor, but over the course of the next few days, as you can see in the following slides, they managed to make interesting letter forms with paper and scissor. In fact, Nirmala, one of the more skilled craftswomen, even started designing the letter B by using a combination of paper cuts and drawing. Letters and type are important from several perspectives. Firstly, since letters are decontextualized from the motifs and patterns the craftswomen are used to working with, it challenges them in new ways. Secondly, most craftswomen are still illiterate in India, and the use and emphasis of the alphabet gets them interested in learning how to read and write. So Barmer Khatab and Marwari applique are two typefaces made from traditional botanical motifs that contrast the barren desert region from which the crafts originate. Next, we're going to look at Suf embroidery, which is a highly geometrical and grid-based embroidery. Our process of working with Suf craftswomen was different from Barmer, as this embroidery is made up of shapes that are derived from a triangle and used in various sizes. So what we did was we created kits of various pre-cut shapes of letters made of paper, which the craftswomen could use to construct letter forms. And this was an important step in giving them a sense of ownership and where they could decide the various forms that a letter could contain before making the embroideries. You must understand that most often craftspeople are just given a design to make. It insults their creativity and intelligence, and we wanted to give them a chance to come up with their own designs and ideas, which also provides a fresh insight into the project. Of course, oftentimes what happens is that designers do have to come in and balance the original ideas that the craftswomen would have with certain constraints that we face in in font development, but also in terms of aesthetical aspects where we may come up with different designs based on their designs. So this is a balancing act that we have to do sometimes, and that's challenging. It's one of the challenging aspects of typecraft. Here we see some of the final embroideries done by the craftswomen. The idea of community is at the heart of typecraft. This is not only from the perspective of collaboration and mutual respect, but also how society in many parts of India is still organized in terms of caste and community. By embedding motifs, patterns, and meaning that is relevant to each community, the typefaces represent a long lineage, a living tradition, and an identity that has developed over centuries. Women are the gatekeepers of the home and the community in villages and small towns across India. Their empowerment also ensures benefit to their children, the family, and the community. We're going to briefly look at some of the other typefaces we've worked on. Each typeface is made from a craft or a tribal art which belongs to a specific region, material, process, and context. Here's Chitara, which is a floor and wall art applied outside the home as a sign of auspiciousness to welcome the gods. Chitara art is highly intricate, geometric, and abstract. We worked with Radha Sulur of the Devaru community in Karnataka, South India. Traditionally, this art was made with rice flour paste and clay paste. As you can see, Radha is applying outside her home. But like today, many crafts have become commercial and are sold as artworks. So this is a depiction of Lord Shiva on a chariot. And then we've kind of overlaid it with typography just to see how letter forms could come up from these forms. Next, I'm going to talk about Godna, or tribal tattoo art made into a Latin script typeface. This is done in collaboration with the Goan tribe of Chhattisgarh in central India. So tribals or Adivasi are the original people of India, mainly living in the forested and mountainous regions of the country. They use tattoos extensively on their bodies, and these tattoos have various functions that go beyond decoration. They're not only markers of identities and rites of passage, but also are used to heal diseases and ailments. Living in a tropical forest with many types of diseases, these tattoos were believed to have antibiotic qualities. We worked with Sunita, Ramkeli, and Sumitra from Chhattisgarh to create this typeface. Each tattoo, before we get into the actual type design process, we research the history, context, function, application, and the current scenario of the craft. So here we are looking at how the pigment is made, how the needles are clustered, how it is applied onto the skin, and then how is the skin finally treated with turmeric paste, what is the meaning of that, and what is the function of that. And each tattoo is codified in terms of design, placement, and when it is to be applied, as we have shown in this chart. The next stage is to actually work with the crafts people without any constraints. As we discussed earlier, we initially asked them to make the letter forms themselves based on their own craft. Here we see the tattoo art becoming into a alphabet for the first time, done by the craftswomen. However, of course, this cannot be used as a font because of various reasons. The cap heights are variable, so you would have issues technically in making it work as a font. So what we do is we then give them a set of constraints in terms of cap heights, but also overall proportions and thicknesses of the letters. At this stage, we have a good sense of what are the sizes the women work at, what is the scale, because each craft has its own scale that they work at, and that's something that is important to understand before proceeding. And then after this, they start making all the various letter forms. Since there were three women, we decided to work with three different styles. And here you can see the three different styles done by the three different women. After this comes the stage of digitization, where we scan the artwork and we then trace them and vectorize it. We fix any inconsistencies or any irregularities, or if you think the proportions are off in some places. And then finally, we get into font development. And as you can see, so this is done in Glyphs app. And as you can see that this typeface has a large number of nodes reflecting the complexity of the tattoos themselves. And that posed quite a lot of problems to us, but we managed to work around by disabling subroutines in the Glyph app. And that enabled us to come up with a large typeset, font set, as you can see here, with an extended character set as well. Dhibria Rabadi Embroidery is the next craft I'm going to talk about, in collaboration with Bali Ben, Jenny Ben, Seju Ben, Parma Ben, and Dawal Ben. So the Rabadi community are desert-based nomadic and semi-nomadic cattle herders, and there are many subgroups. So we work with the Dhibria Rabadi group. Their embroideries are used for clothing, especially for women, but also for animals such as camel, coverings, etc. They migrated to Kutch in western India from the Thar desert of Rajasthan. If you look at the embroidery, it is highly dense and almost looks like applique because it's so dense, and there's a limited color palette. There are certain characteristics called dant. They're like teeth, like these teeth that stick out on the edges. And that makes it highly, mesmerizing, I would say, in a sense. And these embroideries are used at the entrances of homes, because the entrance of a home in India is considered extremely important. It's the place where you welcome a guest or a god into your house. And so this elaborate decoration is part of this ritual of welcoming someone into your home for the first time. Because the women had a difficulty in drawing the letters in this case, and at this stage we had not worked out our design methodology workshop, what we did was instead we started looking at motifs and designs in their environment, in their village, such as this W. It looks like a W on a mud hut in a Rabadi village. This is from a textile, in fact. So it's not really a W, it's a motif that they use, but because it resembles like one, we decided to use it as part of the alphabet. We also needed to strike a balance between the imperfection of the hand and the precision of the computer, as you can see in these slides. In conclusion, I'd like to talk about how the fact that folk crafts and tribal art have been, for the most part, been ignored by graphic designers in India. By engaging with them through Typecraft, we are creating a much needed discourse on what constitutes Indian design. Importantly, this is an opportunity for design to make a real difference to craft communities and to itself by being enriched by the work of these communities before they merge into the mainstream. While crafts that we work with might have a long lineage and also evoke a sense of nostalgia, Typecraft is very much rooted in the present. Typecraft can make more of an impact as a tool for literacy and education by bringing local context and meaning. We endeavor a world where the children of the craftswomen can become literate from the very letters their mothers are making. One idea is to make a learning app that addresses rural communities in their own language, employing local crafts that emphasize folklore and mythology of the area as part of the education. The idea is to bring ownership of the digital content back to the village community. Alphabet quilts can also be used not only to teach children the alphabet, but also to sensitize them to the tactile world of craft. These quilts would also lead to livelihood for the craftswomen and can help create value for local crafts across the country. On behalf of Andrea Balius and Sol Matas, the other partners of the Typecraft Initiative, I would like to thank the craftswomen from across the country who worked on the Typecraft Initiative till date, our partner organizations without whom we wouldn't have been able to do the work we love to do. I would also like to thank our past employees, interns, and most especially the volunteers for their contribution. Gracias, shukriya, thank you very much for listening. I look forward to your questions.